Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacalyn. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacalyn at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. The doctor certainly is in today. Welcome to USA Global TV, home of Talking Heads. And a big shout out to our friends listening on Business Talk Radio out of New York. Hello, Chris Roberts. I am Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is The Wise Ones. This show is so much fun because of my co-host, Fred. He is a pure delight. He is out there shaking up the world, constantly creating new content, bringing inspiring people and just sharing messages that are just wonderful and relevant for the entire world. So let's bring out Fred. Hi.
Hi, Jacalyn. How you doing? How's everybody out there? Having a good attitude, I hope, right?
Yes. Tell us all about the importance of attitude, since you are the guru, Fred.
The attitude is, I don't know. I think attitude is one of the most important things you can have. And other than gratitude is one of the most important human emotions you can have. But your attitude about life, about yourself, about the people around you and the things you do in life, man, they're so relevant. They are so important. And if you have a bad attitude, the world can stink. If you have a good attitude, then, everything, you like looking through rose-colored glasses. There's that silver lining. You can always find the good in things. And that's what I try to do, is try to encourage everybody to find the good stuff, not look at the bad stuff, because there's plenty of that to go around. Make something positive out of it. That's my motto is change your attitude. You can change your life, good or bad, but you change your attitude to a positive, you can have a positive life.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Fred. And as we were talking on other shows and just in general, every day is not going to be the best. Things are going to happen, but yet there's always something to be grateful for, whether it's the fact that your eyes are open, you can see, you can breathe, you have a roof over your head, whatever it is. So can you share a little bit before we bring out our guests? How do you keep yourself in the right frame of mind when there are things that are challenging? You've mentioned you have pain that you struggle with, that you have struggled with. So when you're in those moments where it feels just overwhelming, how do you keep that positive attitude?
Wow, that's like I say, everybody say, well, it's easy. You're always happy all the time. You wake up, probably jump out of bed. Most of the time, luckily I do, but I have those days where I get up and it's like, oh, I don't feel good, didn't sleep good, I'm worried about this, the dog is sick, this is wrong, that's wrong. Things are not going right. It's a bad hair day. But I got to tell myself, you know what? I know it's going to get better. And the minute you start saying things, positive affirmations out loud, whether it's a pain and whatever, it hurts, some disease, something's going on in your life that's painful, you start saying positive things about it. It's going to get better. I will find a way to get around this. I will find a solution to this problem. We will get through this. When you start saying those things out loud, the chemistry in your body starts to change. And when your chemistry starts to change, endorphins are released, serotonin is released, all these things, you start laughing about life instead of being moaning and groaning. And when you do that, all of a sudden your body starts, it responds. It's just like a computer. You can type whatever you want to in there and it's going to respond. Whatever you start putting in here, that's what's going to create your day and the people around you. So that I just start by saying, look, this pain is going to go away. The swelling is going to go down. This finance is going to be taken care of. This issue I'm having with the book is going to take care of. Everything's going to work out. And I'll tell you what, you can think clearer. More solutions are more readily available. And the decisions you make are so much better than when you try to make them in a bad mood. Okay? That's it.
Thank you, Fred. I think that's great direction to really think about when you have to make an important decision in your life. What frame of mind are you in? Are you reacting? Are you feeling sorry for yourself? Are you coming from a place of fear and panic? Because none of those, in my experience, have been a great time to make an important decision.
That's absolutely true, because like you said, we're faced with issues all the time. And life is like 90% of what happens to you. But the real key is the 10%, it's how you react to it. And when you react in a positive manner, it's easier to get through the valleys that you're going through and get back on top of the mountain. So that 10% is important. And once you start changing that 10% of your attitude, that 90% gets solved.
Amen to that. Yes. So, Fred, let's bring out our guest, who also is a man with an incredible attitude. Why don't you go ahead and introduce him?
Oh, God, I'm lucky to introduce this guy. He is a trip. He's a hoot. He's called the Rabbi, and Rabbi Yonason Goldson. Now, you can't get a more Jewish name than Yonasongoldson. That's Yonasongoldson, I'm telling you now. He is the ethics ninja. He is a co-host of his own show, The Rabbi and the Shrink. And if you get a chance, if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, if you get a chance to listen to him, he is a hoot to listen to, because he looks at things obliquely. He's an author, he's a keynote speaker, he's a coach, and he's just an incredible, wonderful human being that has such a brilliant touch and key points on life and life in general. So I'd like to right now introduce Yonason Goldson.
Hi, welcome to the program.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and thank you, Fred. I don't know who you were describing, but somebody with my name sounded like quite a person.
It's attached to your name and your face now.
That was brilliant. Now, how did you two connect?
Well, the way I'm connected with pretty
on
much everybody
LinkedIn.
these days. LinkedIn, that's where I spend a good part of my time. There's so many quality people there, and you can really create communities, especially getting through COVID, when we've had to cut down our face-to-face engagements. I've been grateful to find some really, really worthwhile people to hang out with, and Fred's one of them.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, we're really glad that you're here. And just for our audience who's just joining, this show is The Wise Ones. And so, Rabbi, you obviously are very wise. And before we get into your background, I would love if you would just share with us what you've been finding in terms of people turning to or turning away from religion during this whole pandemic. Have you noticed any trends?
That's a really interesting question. It's been challenging for religious people because religion requires community to a large extent. Sure, my relationship with God is personal, but as a member of a community, I'm able to share my values with people who see the world the way I do. Sometimes talk to people who see the world differently. And we're able, through discussion and constructive disagreement, to refine our understandings, to learn more about ourselves by learning more about others. So it has been a challenging time for the religious. If it's, there was almost a whole year when I couldn't go to synagogue. How do we stay connected to one another in a way that reinforces and supports us in our beliefs? Sometimes we turn to God, sometimes we turn away from God. And, I think every crisis brings out the best in some people, brings out not the best in others. I mean, there are even stories about the Holocaust, tremendous acts of humanity, of nobility, of self-sacrifice from some, and unspeakable cruelty from others. So I'm not sure if I've seen a single trend. What I have seen is that dealing with the current crisis has forced us to look at ourselves and look at the world with fresh eyes.
Brilliant.
Wow.
Thank you.
See what I mean? That's profound.
Yes,
that's pretty
profound
deep,
is the word, definitely.
That's very encouraging too, because we all go through that separation part, and now we're able to kind of get back into going back to church, going back to the community a little bit, and that's been a little bit more refreshing. But it has been a challenge. But like God said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the key word is through. And as long as we know that we're going to get through it, we're going to make it to the other side, and God will be there helping us. So.
Well, and what you said earlier, Fred, about attitude and gratitude, which really go hand in hand. And before I get into that, it's very flattering to hear you describe me as being wise. I'm just the custodian of a higher wisdom.
That's true.
I don't claim to be the source of any great insights. My experiences have positioned me to be able to sometimes articulate that higher wisdom in a way that is a little bit more sometimes relevant to the modern world. But I don't take credit for any of it. But in terms of gratitude, if we don't have the highs and lows, if we don't have the peaks and valleys, life is just a plateau. And when you're on a plateau, it doesn't matter how high you are. You can be on a high plateau or a low plateau. It's all the same. We need those times of struggle and challenge and difficulty to make us appreciate the times of accomplishment and achievement and satisfaction. And so, as you said, Fred, when we go through those difficult times, our attitude makes all the difference in the world. And with the proper attitude, I can even be grateful for the challenges and the difficulties and the obstacles and the hardships, because I understand that they are positioning me to move into a better place.
Wow. Again, that's a
Wow.
wonderful way to put it. And you say, go ahead, Jack. Go ahead, Dr. Jack.
I was just going to say that what's really interesting also is there's an old expression, of course, I can't remember the exact words, but you can really tell the character of someone when they're going through a hard time, how they show up and how they show for other people. And what I've seen on this platform, we've been doing this for just over a year, is people from all over the world helping other people. And I just love it. I just love the fact that people are not looking within all the time. They're looking without, out so that they can help people, which I think is brilliant. What are your thoughts on that, gentlemen?
Go ahead, Yonason.
Well, the sages say pretty much what you just said, that you judge a person by his cup, his purse, and his anger. It's when you say it in Hebrew, it is a little lilt to it. But what do people do when they have reason to get upset? And somebody really does something to me that's offensive or hurtful, and I have every right to get upset. Or sometimes I don't have a right to get upset. I get upset anyway. But you see, how do we respond in times when we feel that there's been a trespass against us? Do we moderate our reaction, or do we blow up? When it comes to a purse or a wallet, how are we with our money? Are we stingy? Are we tight-fisted? Are we profligate? Are we throwing money around? Or are we measured? And with our cup, with the way we eat and we drink, with our appetites. Sure, we're not supposed to be monks, most of us. We're supposed to be living lives where we engage the world. But to go to excess, then I just become a creature of indulgence. And that's not going to serve me very well. So always striking that right balance, always finding the position of moderation in our behaviors. That's really the sign of a mature person, of a thoughtful person, of a person who understands that his place in the world is to get along with others.
Thank you.
That is fantastic.
Yes, it is. Fred, I have about 1,000 questions, but I don't want to keep going. Go ahead. I'll do.
Well, Yonason, I was just telling Jack earlier that you have this ability to look at life from an oblique angle sometimes, and I love it on your the Rabbi and the Shrink, or some of your speeches. You give a 2.5-minute speech on LinkedIn and YouTube, and they're so delightful. I laughed myself silly about the NFL team games. I couldn't quit laughing. It was just spot on. I'm telling you, it was just delicious. And then you also talked about the TV shows and why you quit watching so many of them. And it's just so wonderful the way you look at things. And I wish somebody would look at a lot of the things they do or they participate in with that same oblique attitude. As they step outside of that and look at it way from a different angle. The way you do, you come up with such wonderful, delightful recourses in what we do in life and what we put up with or don't put up with.
Well, it's interesting. The way the eye is designed, we have cones and rods, and I get them mixed up sometimes, but if I remember correctly, the cone is at the center of the eye, and it's for looking straight ahead, and it focuses on sharp, clear images. And I believe it's the rods that are on the periphery, and that provides us with our peripheral vision. But the rods focus in more on shades and nuances. And so what Aristotle called averted vision, when we talk about seeing something out of the corner of our eye, and then sometimes you turn to look at it and you can't see it because it's not the type of object that the direct vision can pick up. And so very often when we look at things, as you say, from an oblique angle, whether it's physically or figuratively, we start to notice all kinds of nuances that we don't look when we look straight ahead. And today, the world suffers from tunnel vision. We are all so focused on my beliefs, my values, my ideas, my community, my politics, my religion, my way of interpreting things, and we don't give ourselves the chance to see a wider view. We don't give ourselves a chance. When in my work on ethics, ethics is all about gray. That's why I titled my last book, Grappling with the Gray. Because if it's black or white, it's pretty straightforward, it's pretty simple. We can all figure that out. But so much of life is in those gray areas, choosing not between right and wrong, but between right and right, or wrong and wrong. How do we prioritize? How do we deal with complex situations? I can't just pick out my phone and punch in the data and hit enter. There's no app for being ethical. We have to struggle with it. And if we don't give ourselves the opportunity to broaden our perspective, to get more context, to consider points of view that may not be so comfortable, then we're going to get trapped into reactive thinking, reactive behavior, instead of responsive behavior. And response, someone pointed out to me recently, is the root of responsibility. When we are responsible, it means that we are responding the way we should be and not reacting the way we shouldn't be.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
Another
deep.
so deep. I know. I love it. A question that I have for you, I interview a lot of people who have overcome some type of adversity. And in many cases, what they'll share is that they were going down a path and they had to make a choice. And they made the choice that they did, knowing that it wasn't ethically the best one or the right one, but also knowing that God would forgive them. So what do you think about that, Rabbi?
Well, in Jewish tradition, we say that God always forgives, except when a person says, I will sin and God will forgive me. Because then you've now used the escape clause to justify the sin in the first place. The word that we use for sin most commonly, the Hebrew word is called chet, which technically translates as to miss the mark. And we all make mistakes. We all make errors. We all trip up from time to time. We miscalculate. We're not perfect, and we're not supposed to be. The question is, what's leading us into those errors? If it's just our humanity, then okay, I recognize I tripped up. I made a mistake. I apologize. I take responsibility. I try to fix the damage, and I move forward. But if it's premeditated, then that's much more dangerous, and it's much harder to fix, because it means it's really part of who I am. If I'm negligent, I'm careless, that's also harder to fix. Part of being responsible means that we do what we can to avoid mistakes in the first place. And then, when inevitably we make them, then we take responsibility. We try to learn from them so we don't keep repeating them again and again.
Thank you. Thank you. So in those cases, can we forgive ourselves? Can we forgive ourselves for being negligent? Can we forgive ourselves for being unethical or irresponsible? Or, do we just walk around carrying that the rest of our lives?
That's a really interesting question. The short answer is we have to forgive ourselves. But again, part of forgiveness is the commitment to do better. If I simply say, I'm sorry, it's like we do with our kids. Right? Say you're sorry. Sorry. They don't know. They know what they're saying. But what we're trying to do is train them. So as they become adults, they understand the concept of taking responsibility. But when a 20-year-old or 30-year-old or 40-year-old is saying, sorry, it's not real convincing. And so there has to be an authenticity, a sincerity behind that apology. But we do have to forgive ourselves, because if we don't, we can't move forward. It doesn't mean that the consequences of our actions may persist. It doesn't mean that there may be residual pain. Sometimes we can do things that really cause a lot of harm, a lot of damage, and we have to live with the consequences of that. So again, it's that kind of paradox, that kind of uneasy balance or tension between taking responsibility and at the same time forgiving myself so that I can move forward and become a better version of myself, someone who won't repeat those same mistakes.
That's very helpful.
Fantastic.
Thank you. When you think
That's
about
so
the news, I don't even listen to the news. I read it on my phone because I can't stand hearing. But when you think about the atrocities that are taking place, the crimes, the negligence, the unethical behavior, I mean, now apparently it's legal to go into a store and take X amount of dollars of stuff and just walk out and nothing happened. And I just wonder whether it's a school shooting or an accidental killing of an actor or whatever it might be. How does that person take the next step to do the right thing? Because there's got to be a huge amount of emotional, baggage and pain that goes on. And you have to deal with all of that. And I think in many cases, you look to a higher power to say, help me get through this. How can I repent? What can I do?
It's very interesting you asked that. I'm going to give you a recommendation for future guests. A fellow by the name of Lester Young. You mentioned my podcast, Fred the Rabbi and the Shrink. Well, we interviewed him yesterday. And he is one of the most extraordinary individuals I've met. It's the only time I've ever seen my co-host crying during an interview, because as a 19-year-old, he killed a man in a drug deal that went wrong. And he was sentenced to life imprisonment. And he served 22 years. And while he was in prison, the prison chaplain steered him onto a new course. And he began reading, he began learning, he began understanding himself. He was giving classes to inmates in the prison courtyard, to hundreds of people at a time. And he's been out for 7 years now, and he is truly a person who has transformed himself. He's an advocate for prison reform so that inmates are decriminalized, not recriminalized. And he's talking to young people. I mean, he's a really extraordinary individual. And part of it, I mean, it was largely him recognizing that he did something horrific. He did everything he could he actually reached out to the family members. And, to hear his story of personal transformation and redemption, most of us don't have to go that distance. The mistakes that we make are not that horrific. But when you hear stories like this, it inspires us to see, somebody like that could come so far. Well, what's my excuse for not trying to go the distance that I need to go?
Wow, super.
That's such a great example, because you're right. We've had people in here who have killed people, or something happened that was absolutely horrific, sex trafficking, and yet they find their way back and they find their way to help other people. Their whole life is about helping other people. And then others, do things that are not anywhere near as life-changing, but yet they can't give forgiveness to themselves or to other people. They look into their purse and make a donation of their time or money. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, and it all comes from recognizing the extraordinary power of the human soul. What makes us different from any other creature in this world is that we have a spark of the divine, and that we can aspire to become more than we are. We just finished the holiday of Hanukkah, and Hanukkah people focus on the military battle between us and the Syrian Greeks, but really the essence of Hanukkah is a cultural war, because Greek philosophy was human beings are perfect as we are, and we don't need to transform ourselves or elevate ourselves. You look at the Greek gods, they're all adolescents on steroids. Why would you worship gods like this? Because it gives me an excuse. I don't have to look to be better in myself. And that culture ran into Jewish culture, which is all about self-development, the quest for self-perfection, which will never be achieved in this world, and always looking to better ourselves. And when we do that, when we live our lives that way, then we live life with this tremendous sense of purpose, which is the secret to happiness, and this sense of accomplishment, because over the course of time, we can see the progress we make. And that is worth more than any amount of money I can make. It's worth more than pleasure I get from any kind of chemicals or substances or physical activities. And it enhances everything else in my life.
Wow.
Another very deep share that you had. We could keep you here all day. I still want to get to hitchhiking, to having you read from your book. There's so much to talk about. Let's just take a quick break. We're going to hear from a dear friend and co-host and sponsor. Her name is Diane Floyd Boehm. She's just written another book, A Song of Peace. And let's take a look, and then we'll be right back with Fred and with the rabbi.
Kapayapaan, kapayapaan, kapayapaan.
Diane Floyd Boehm's A Song of Peace tells the story of a young lad named Tommy whose fervent wish for peace on earth touches the hearts of his friends and family, spreads to his community, and eventually unites the whole world around making his dream of peace a reality for everyone. Sit down with the children in your life and share Tommy's amazing story of love and hope. Sing your own song of peace and invite the children to join you. Tommy's tale is more than just a story. It's a movement, and everyone's warmly welcome to take part.
Kapayapaan, 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 kapayapaan.
You'll find A Song of Peace, along with many other wonderful learning and enriching opportunities for children of all ages, at DianeFloydBoehm.com.
life are his riches, but only if the poor hears no reproof. And this is the challenge of Proverbs, is the language seems a little bit out of date for us. So I write as follows. The Hebrew word for charity is tzedakah, derived from the word tzedek, which means justice. Since charity is an act of kindness and mercy, how do we understand its connection with justice, which implies something earned and deserved? Legislators may pass laws and judges may issue sentences, but a justice system depends upon enforcement officers and bailiffs to implement and uphold the rule of law. Similarly, members of a community have a responsibility to themselves and those around them to judge between right and wrong, between good and evil. In this way, human beings build a society based on justice. In terms of criminal justice, every human society has established a formal system to protect its citizens and deal with those who pose a threat to others. In terms of human justice, it is the individual who must decide on how best he can correct the inequities of circumstance. If he has more than he needs, it is only just that he shares his good fortune with others. If he does so to the best of his means and ability, he is considered a tzaddik, a just and righteous person. So the idea is that when I see my responsibility to be charitable, to be compassionate, then I'm looking at a bigger view of justice, a cosmic sense of justice. And we say that the best kind of charity you can give is to give another person a job, to help a person have a job and succeed in that job, because then that person no longer needs charity. And so there's a level at which compassion and justice actually fuse together. That's the highest form of charity.
Wow. That's, again, fantastic from your book. That was really good.
That's excellent.
You mentioned a lot. I read an article you wrote about, if I'm pronouncing it right, Shanika, and about being the original for the cancel culture, right? It was really brilliant because it really hits on today's, you were asking that question about today's, all the problems that come up. Let me read just the first sentence out of this article he wrote. It said, resist the subversion of darkness in the name of enlightenment. The lesson of Shanika is not that we must take up arms against the ideological oppressions. Rather, we must arm ourselves with logic and reason, with information and articulation to know and understand who we are and what we believe. Knowledge is power and wisdom is greater than warfare. And that fits into so much. We get so much stuff on the media. We get so much stuff here. So much is happening. And we're given a lot of fake stuff, a lot of real stuff. And knowledge is the key to solving so many of the world's problems today, including this pandemic. Knowledge is the key. And that is fantastic what you did. The whole article is great.
We're in a
talk
very
a little bit about that.
Place. Thank you. Yeah, we're in a very dangerous place in our society right now, where we don't and can't trust so much of our media. The job of the media is to shine a light on those hidden places, to show us what we can't see on our own. And when the media are more interested in advancing their own ideology than they are in presenting an honest view, it doesn't matter whether they're on the right or the left, because eventually what people do is they'll either say, I'm just going to listen to the people who tell me what I want to hear, or Dr. Jacalyn, as you said, I just can't listen to this anymore because it's too distressing and I can't believe what I'm hearing, and I can't stand the tone of acrimony and this character assassination that is perpetually coming through our news outlets. So, for all the evils of the internet, there are options. We can search for authorities that do deserve our trust, but it's a hard search. We really have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be willing to listen to people who don't always tell us what we want to hear, because that's the only way we're going to get anywhere near the truth. And it's the only way that we have a chance of actually making things better.
That's so true. Fantastic.
Yes, it is. Something we do have a comment. Sorry, let me see. We have from Russ Hedge. I think it's good
Yeah,
morning,
it's Russ.
all. And
Russ is awesome.
thank you, and great to see you, Fred. Well, very nice. Thank you, Russ.
Thanks, Russ.
So one thing that I just want to comment on, I am with my mom, and she has the news on quite often, and I noticed that she really believes everything that she hears. And I think it's really overwhelming and unfair because the media does have the power to, I'm going to say brainwash in air quotes for you on the radio. And so I just choose not to listen to it because it affects my mood. And whatever is going on, I need to still be positive, put positive light out into the world. And if I sat around watching, listening all the time, I would think to myself, the world is coming to an end.
Yeah, and I think that's spot on, because perception does influence reality. And if we think that our society is made up of armed camps just looking for the opportunity to destroy each other, then gradually that becomes our society. And that is why I say it's so dangerous. I believe that there really is a rational middle, not a middle of people who are just sort of arbitrarily centered, but people who are moderate in their thinking, in their behavior. I was actually participated in a panel of people who identified as either right-leaning or left-leaning, and it was remarkable how we could have civil conversations, we could dispel stereotypes, we could agree to disagree and make the effort to understand where people are coming from, even if we don't see things their way. It's not that hard.
Mm-hmm.
But in a world that's fueled by advertising and algorithms and it's immediate gratification of hearing things that appeal to me and my preconceptions, it takes a lot of discipline to get ourselves to engage on a deeper and again a more mature level.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. I was wondering, you must hear from people on a regular basis. They're suffering, they are afraid, they are lost, they are looking for something, they are looking to you. And although, as you said, you are not the wise one, you are the medium that the information comes from. How do you keep your attitude positive when so much negative energy is being brought to you that you have to try to then take that person and help lift them up and see the light?
Well, it's interesting you asked that because my co-host on my podcast, Dr. Margarita Guri, she counsels veterans, some of whom are suicidal, and she's told me how draining that is on her because most of the time people come to ask me something and it's kind of philosophical, maybe they just need to vent a little bit. It's not always some sort of a life or death situation. And so I don't feel this tremendous pressure that I have to get it exactly right. But she's counseling people that literally their lives are on the line. And that does take a tremendous emotional toll. I think the way we handle it is that we really believe in the value that we are providing for the world. If I have a talent, whatever that talent is, and we all have talents, and I work to develop that talent in a way that contributes positively to the world, then I have a sense of purpose in my life. I have a sense of mission in my life. As I mentioned earlier, that sense of purpose is the key to happiness. It's a wonderful phrase we have in the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it's a terrible mindset error to think about pursuing happiness. If you pursue happiness, you're never going to catch it because happiness is the natural byproduct of leading a life filled with meaning and purpose and mission. And so you don't pursue happiness, you pursue purpose. And by pursuing purpose, that's where happiness comes from. And happiness doesn't mean I'm on cloud nine all the time. Happiness means that my default, that my baseline is one of stability, security, and a measure of satisfaction. And that when that gets me through the difficult times, and it makes the better times even better, and it keeps me moving forward.
I really appreciate your transparency there. And I think what you hit on is so important, purpose. When we don't know our purpose, I've been through it myself. I was in the corporate world for 20 some years, and I had 6-figure income and traveled around the world and stayed at the best resorts, but I was always sick. I was always sick. And it's because I wasn't living in my lane. I wasn't following my purpose. And I think when you follow your purpose, which is where I am today, everything seems to be so beautiful and light and wonderful. No, there's still problems. I'm not sick anymore, which is amazing. But I just wish for everyone, if they could find their purpose. What are some ways that people can do that?
Oh boy. I think it starts with education, and we could get into a whole show about the problems with education these days, because so much of higher education has become indoctrination. But what education is supposed to be is a place to discover new ideas, to debate ideas, to challenge ourselves to think more deeply and to look at things in a fresh way. And it's very comfortable. We already talked about this. Very comfortable to listen to people who are just going to reaffirm what I already think, but it doesn't get me anywhere. It just makes me retreat into my own enclave of ideology or groupthink, and convinces me that I'm right and everybody else is wrong. And really, what we need to do is we need to engage people who come from a different perspective. We need to expose ourselves to ways of thinking that challenge us to work harder, to consider more, to recognize that life is complicated and the world's complicated, and that there can be more than one legitimate way of looking at an issue. And that when we open ourselves up to possibilities, we actually make our lives much richer, and we become much more secure in the things we believe, because we're not fearful that somebody's going to expose us for being, for standing on a position that's not authentic.
Exactly.
Bravo.
And I've been working on finishing up my book, Leadership with an Attitude, and I focus mostly on the employees, not the presidents and the CEOs and stuff. And my main thrust in the whole seminar that I do in the book is the fact that if you're a janitor, you don't have to be the boss to be a leader. And a lot of people, I'm like Jacalyn, I worked in the corporate world for over 22 years too. And a lot of things, I saw the janitor, the guy that takes care of the lawn, the secretary, whatever. That was, oh, I'm just a secretary. I'm just a janitor. I'm worthless. Their self-affirmations are degrading themselves and to lift themselves up. I'm trying to tell them, look, you do not have to be the boss to be a leader. You can be a leader in your field. You can be the best in your field. If you want to be the best janitor, you can be the best janitor. And those are the things that each individual has a purpose. And if that purpose is to make sure that the ground outside is mowed and the bushes look good, or the floors are clean on the inside, and the restrooms are, you want to go into, that's important. They're important. And every person in this world has a purpose. You said earlier, God gives us the talent. It's up to us to share it. And that's what we do here on this show, The Wise Ones. And you've done it eloquently today, Yonason.
I mean, I love that, Fred, and it strikes, because I just the other day heard about a medical supply company, or not a medical research company, that when they were being observed and reviewed, the janitors were overheard saying, "We're helping cure cancer." The janitors were saying that.
Yeah.
Because
Wow.
the culture of the business, of the company, was such that we are all partners. We're all playing a role. And if you don't have a maintenance staff, you don't have a custodial staff, you can't have a functioning operation. So they were made to feel as partners because they were partners. And when instead we say, well, we can't call them janitors, let's call them custodians. No, let's call them maintenance men. No, let's call them sanitation engineers. No, let's call them industrial hygiene technicians. Who are we kidding? If we respect them for what they do, it doesn't matter what label we put on them. If we don't respect them, it doesn't matter what label we put on them. But to recognize that they're playing a role, an essential role, and that makes them partners in the success that we all share. Wow, that's how you. And in my ethics programs and keynotes and trainings, this is the message that I communicate. It all starts with culture, and it all starts with attitude, and that we have control over that.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Absolutely. So many gems that you brought here today, and we're just scratching the surface. So
yeah, we need another hour here, Jackie.
we definitely do. So I hope that you'll come back and see us again.
Oh, we can make that work.
Fantastic. We didn't even get to the hitchhiking or some of the other questions that I have, but where can we reach out to you? We have your information here that we want to make sure everybody can get, especially people listening on the radio. How do people contact you, and who would you like to reach out to you, and where can we hear your podcast?
So my website is Yonason Goldson, my name, YONASON, and pretty much everything is linked there. You can find my videos, my articles, my podcast, and my the information about how to hire me to speak or to consult. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, so please encourage people to reach out to me and connect on LinkedIn. I'm happy to help people in their businesses, in their companies, and in their personal lives.
Thank you so much for bringing so much wonderful value here today. We really appreciate you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, Yonason,
thank you.
I can't thank you enough. You've been a delightful guest, and you brought a spot of just wonderful wisdom to this show. I really appreciate you coming on. I really do.
I do too. Thank you. And we've got a show coming right up. So rather than do the traditional close, I'm going to ask Fred if you can give people information on how to reach you, and then we'll all say goodbye together.
Okay, yeah, just quickly, you see down there below, it says you can reach me on LinkedIn a lot. I do most everything on LinkedIn, or you can get me on my email, which is fkienle@aol.com. And drop me a line if you want to hire me to speak, if you want to do any seminars that I do, want to get some information on my books. They're all about attitude. I don't care if it's safety with an attitude, laughing with an attitude, singing with an attitude, gratitude with an attitude, faith with an attitude, and leadership with an attitude, and then health with an attitude. So thank you guys very much. Yonason, again, appreciate it. Dr. Jacalyn, appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. And thank you, everybody out there listening or watching. We are live on 11 platforms right now, and we become a podcast on 6 others. But the easiest way to find us is to go to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV. Go across to the top to playlists, and you'll see our 20 shows a week are divided into different playlists, and you can watch your favorites there. So thanks again, everyone. We're coming right back with the Business Talk Show with my co-host, Al Cini. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Yonason, thank you. Jacalyn, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.